You know, I always imagined that it would be a little bit more grandiose, talking about the Donald Trump border wall, guys. What is the situation? The Biden administration came out in 2022 and said they're going to resume construction on it. How much of it has been built? What did it cost? What do I think of Trump and the idea of the wall? I'm just going to give my little 2-minute quick talk on what I think about the wall, and then we'll get into the specifics of it. So, Trump comes out 2015. He says we need to build a wall. It makes sense. You're dealing with immigration problems. You're dealing with a lot of illegals. You build a wall. It's going to solve a lot of issues. Yes, you can dig under it. You can do different things, but it is going to mitigate a lot of the problems. So I did agree the wall was a good idea. There's a few issues, though. Trump came out and said that Mexico is going to pay for it, kind of as a way to energize his base. I get it. And technically, yes, the United States has the military to make Mexico pay for it. The only issue is that would infringe on a lot of things. You would, have to have some type of trade war, or you would have to threaten Mexico to force them into paying for it. It's like an analogy where Mexico is like a sleeping cat, and you're saying, pay me, pay me, pay me, and Mexico's like, what are you going to do about it? Are you going to escalate this situation and get NATO mad or whatever? I mean, realistically, man, the United States can really, I know I'm going to sound arrogant, the United States can really do whatever they want. I mean, what is NATO going to kick the U.S. out? They're not going to do that. The United States is NATO. NATO is the United States. By far, the United States is the most important member, so they wouldn't remove them. But it just became this situation where Trump wants to build this wall. It's going to take taxpayer money, but because he's a Republican, that's probably not what you want to run on. So what are we going to do? We're going to have Mexico pay for it. And yet again, yes, you can technically force Mexico to pay for it, but, that would upset a lot of other countries because it would get very ugly and it would involve some type of conflict. So either way, they originally estimate the wall is going to cost around 15 to 20 billion. I think Trump's best strategy would have been writing it off as a military asset and putting it in the military budget at around $20 billion. The wall that they actually ended up choosing, there's a photo of Trump with about 8 prototypes of the wall, different ones you can choose from. I thought they should have gotten a wall that was higher. And it gets really finicky when you look at the border of U.S. and Mexico. There's problems to where there's big valleys, there's rivers, there's all this. If I'm Trump and I would want to build a continuous wall. I don't know if you guys have seen those photos of the immigrants trying to come over and they're all going through rivers and things like that. It's almost like if I'm Trump, I would have pushed the wall back just a little bit. Back on the U.S. side, we don't have to, go into Mexico. Obviously, that would be an infringement. Push it back a little bit so you could continuously complete the wall. You can see that right now there's major gaps in the wall and things like that. Overall, there has been some pretty positive sentiment. Back in 2015, 51% supported it, 37% opposed it. Those are decent numbers. And then you also have 89% of Border Patrol agents said that a wall is necessary to secure the border, while only 7% disagreed. And we're dealing with all these immigration issues. Biden comes out in 2021 and says, we're stopping construction of the wall. We're going to repurpose all the material that was not used. A liberal site did this big story about, it's such a waste, it needs to be repurposed. And then about a year later, border wall construction resumes under Biden. The Biden administration laid out its plan to rev up work on completing the Trump wall. This is the exact same wall that Democrats called Republicans racist for wanting. And then they want to resume it. So that happened on September 18th, 2022, and they want to try and fill in some of the gaps. There is big issues right now with U.S., illegal immigration. So the main problem, and I'll just do a minute on this. The main problem is there's an incentive for one political party to let these people into the country. There's a political advantage. Mainly when you're talking about immigrants, they're going to lean towards voting Democrat. That's going to help the Democrats. This is no different than Democrats saying we should lower the voting age to 16. The more younger, the better for the Democrats. They own that demographic. This is no different than the Republicans saying we need to raise the voting age to 25. The younger it is, the more Democratic people are. So this is just political leverage between these two parties, and there is an incentive to letting some of these illegal people come in because you are going to get helped a little bit in terms of overall voting numbers if they are able to become citizens. But we also have people who think, oh, you shouldn't even have to be a citizen to vote in a US election. But this is more about Trump and the wall, and Biden basically coming out and saying it was a good idea, we're completing it. So, just looking at the wall and the different prototypes that they had, I'm not a fan of the one that they went with, kind of the see-through little slit design. Not that it needs to look nice and like a super big thing, but I don't know. I know they went with the most cost-efficient thing, and there's a specific reason I would say Trump probably wanted to get the cost as low as possible because he ran, again, back in 2016, saying that Mexico was going to pay for it. Well, if Mexico is really not going to pay for it, that means the U.S. taxpayers are going to pay for it. So you lied to us there, and now we're paying for your wall, which, listen, I'm okay with paying to secure the border. That's fine. But there are people that definitely will take that and say, that's ridiculous that Trump says Mexico's going to pay for it, and then we end up paying for it. So Trump goes for a cost-efficient option here. I would have liked to have seen it completely closed and just built up a little bit better. But the main problem with the wall, maybe a fatal flaw to it, is just the terrain on the Mexico-U.S. border, the issues. And then you also have the issue, and you're always going to run into this. You could build a house in the center of Oklahoma, and there would be someone that says it's an environmental problem. But yes, people have talked about the environmental issues that comes from building it. Again, you build anything, they're going to say there's an issue, you're disrupting a bird's nest or whatever. It is what it is at this point in 2023. There's actually some pretty crazy photos of the wall extending into water, and it's just an issue, right? Like, how far couldn't they just swim around that? Am I dumb for thinking they could just swim around that right there? But they actually tried to put it in the water. You can see how deep it goes right there. Kind of a weird little thing, and then there it is, abandoned halfway through Texas. There's a lot of places in Texas where I believe it is open. That was an unfinished section in Texas in July of 2021. Texas governor has pledged to use state funding for the completion of the border wall across the state. And when Trump left the White House in early 2021, it was reported that 458 miles of what was dubbed the border wall system was in place. The wall consists mostly of 18 to 30 foot steel bollards anchored in concrete. The barriers also feature sensors, lights, cameras, and parallel roads. In some places, the vast majority of the 458 miles were constructed in places where some kind of barrier already existed, but most of the pre-existing structures were far less imposing than the new wall. The total figure also includes what the agency called secondary border wall, or sections of the wall built behind pre-existing barriers that ultimately remained in place. So it's like they've got a double wall. You had an original wall, and then you got the Trump wall as well. But again, the fatal flaw in this project is just the terrain on the border of U.S. and Mexico. It's just what you would want if you're talking about a wall. You don't want there to be any gaps, any issues, any rivers. You just want a wall to block off the United States from Mexico. I know that might sound bad, but that's basically what it would be. So there's no gaps. The only way you're getting into the country is through that and legally. But with all the terrain problems, it's very hard to build on certain parts in Texas. But most of Arizona, it looks like, has recently been built up and is blocked off. The Trump administration actually proposed making the wall out of solar panels and saying that it would earn the U.S. $100 million back per year. just off of the sun, but that was deemed to be false. I think it's an interesting idea. Put some solar panels down there. I'm not sure how you would turn that into a wall, really. But, you could make it back in solar power. Imagine if they built that. Just taking a look at some of these renderings. That's an eco-friendly see-through wall. Yeah, that thing would have cost $300 billion to put around. You know who would have done it? If you want to talk about someone building a wall, how about Dubai? That's the exact thing they would have put up. Something like that. And it would have been like $400 billion. I do have to say, love him or hate him, when Trump said the wall just got 10 feet taller, that was prime Trump. Come on, even if you hate him, you got to admit that was a funny quote. Those are the 8 prototypes for the wall. It seems that Trump ended up going with like a combination of the bottom middle 2, where it's kind of see-through, and then on the top it is covered. Personally, I probably would have went with the top left one. It just looks nice, gold, grandiose, very, very nice there. Will the wall ever get fully completed? We don't know. We're going to have to see what happens with 2024. I'm sure if Trump wins again, there's going to be a major push to try and get as much up as possible. He had almost 500 miles complete. Biden comes in. They say, we're done with it. And then they later admit, after record, immigration problems, things like that, they say, no, we will be filling in some of the gaps in Arizona and Texas. And then you also have the Texas governor saying we want to finish it in Texas. So maybe it does get complete. Certainly, if Trump or a Republican gets back into office, it's got a higher chance of being completed earlier, I would say. But that is just the current status on the Trump border wall that is estimated to cost America around $15 to $20 billion overall. But guys, that is going to do it for this video. Make sure you follow me on Twitter. Link to that's always in the description. I'm, of course, The Depressed Ginger. Thank you for watching.